Hello and welcome back, Marvel Champions fans. We have a brand new hero that has been announced. It seems like we get one pretty much once a month, and I love it. It's just awesome to be super excited about different packs that are coming to the game and to always have something to look forward to, and just to see all the interesting ways that they're finding thematically to introduce some of these heroes into the game of Marvel Champions. So we have had War Machine announced. This has been rumored. We finally have it. We have a bunch of cards unveiled. The thematics of War Machine are super cool, and there are some really exciting allies. If you're a fan of allies, if you're a fan of the leadership aspect, because he is a leadership ally or a leadership hero, at least with the cards he comes with in the pack, there is a lot to be excited about here, and a lot that you're probably going to be pumped to pick up to be able to even insert into other decks you have going on. So let's jump right into all the War Machine cards that were announced, and I'll give you my thoughts on them so far. All right, so let's start with the hero card, which is, of course, War Machine. He's got 1 thwart, 2 attack, and 2 defense, and his ability is locked and loaded. So it's a responsibility after you change into the War Machine form, place 5 ammo counters on War Machine. So that might not mean a lot to you yet, you haven't seen anything, but we have seen a lot of these heroes that have different counters on them. That's actually been a bit of a theme we've seen across multiple heroes that have been released recently. You know, for instance, Groot and Drax have both had hero counters, or just not hero counters, just counters on their hero that function in different ways. This is yet another form of counter, and this functions differently than the other ones we've seen, slightly differently. So that will mean more to you as we get into the cards. The only other thing you need to know is his hand size is 5, which is pretty standard. Hit points are 10. So overall, pretty decent base stats and pretty standard hand size and hit points. The ability is really cool. It encourages you to constantly be flipping back to War Machine after you've run out of ammo. And what I love about this hero is that with all his weaponry and how much War Machine revolves around guns and ammunition in general as a character, they've basically found a way to thematically make the reload mechanic that you see in different video games and different, anything to do with guns, put it into card form. You basically have to expend all your counters, and then you got to change to alter ego form essentially to reload, and then come back to hero form, fully replenished. It's a really neat way that they've tied it all in. So let's jump into the alter ego form. You can see how that ties in there. The alter ego form is James Rhodes, of course. Recovery of 3, hand size 6, hit points still 10. Action: choose a War Machine card in your discard pile and shuffle it into your deck. So you have a permanent way to, on your alter ego turn, be able to take a card from your discard pile, get it back into your deck. You're not going to get it immediately, but it is something that's going to keep your deck, give it a little bit more longevity, and you're going to see multiple copies of cards you might otherwise not have seen until you had shuffled the deck. So pretty cool ability that you can use multiple times. Nothing overly flashy or game breaking in terms of other things we've seen on alter ego cards, but it's still a pretty cool ability. Hey guys, editing Dylan over here, covering up a mistake that that goofball filming Dylan made. Believe it or not, the ability here on the alter ego form actually allows you to use it as many times as you want. It's not limited, because it doesn't say on it limited once per round, per phase like we normally see. This means that you can get back as many of them as you want, which is not as broken, I don't think, as it sounds. It's very good, do not get me wrong. But because a lot of his cards are limited by ammo counters and how much ammo you have, it's not going to mean that you can just play everything necessarily, or even everything that you want, that you're going to want to grab them all back. But you might want to, just for the fact of having them in your deck and constantly be able to go through them. I mean, the fact that you're going to spend this much time in alter ego form as your reload mechanic means that with War Machine, you might very rarely, or a lot less frequently than other heroes, run out of your deck because you're just constantly putting them back in. So one huge note that I got to add in, because that idiot made a mistake again, and I have to be here to cover up this track. So just to clarify before someone clarifies it for me in the comments, that is how his ability works. And then there's a forced response. After you change to this form, discard each ammo counter from your identity. So you can't change to alter ego form, keep your counters, and then go back and end up with a whole bunch more counters than you normally would have. You're always going to have them all depleted, and you're going to start at 5 when you turn back to War Machine's form. So pretty standard alter ego form. Again, and really, there's not a lot mechanically here that's going to, really confuse you or be very complex. This is a pretty straightforward hero and alter ego pairing, but as we get into the cards for War Machine, you'll see how these counters come into play and all the different things you can do with the counters, and that's where it gets really exciting. All right, so we're going to start with the hero cards that were revealed. This is Munitions Bunker. Now, this is a support card that costs 2, and the alter ego action on it, it's pretty interesting. It has an alter ego action and a hero action on this support card. So the alter ego action is exhaust munitions bunker, place 2 ammo counters here. So this is an easy way to add an additional 2 ammo counters to your already starting point of 5. Once you have this in play, you can essentially rely on this giving you 7 counters every turn, as long as you've switched to alter ego form at some point in that turn. If you haven't, obviously you're not going to get them from there. However, the hero action is exhaust munitions bunker, move each ammo counter here to war machine. So again, the way this is working is anytime you go to alter ego form and you have this in play, you're going to give yourself 2 counters, or I should say give munitions bunker 2 counters. When you switch back to war machine, you're going to start with 5, and then you're obviously going to use the hero action here to give yourself another 2 for 7. So this being in play, again, it's just a long-winded way of getting you to 7 base instead of 5 base ammo counters. Again, those ammo counters will mean more, and the reasons you'd want to have 7 over 5 will start to mean more as we get into the other cards. But this is going to be a pretty, important card in the War Machine arsenal to really give you more things you can do in your turn by having more counters on it. Okay, let's find out how you're going to be spending these counters. So let's talk about Shoulder Cannon. This is a 2-cost upgrade that has a hero action, which is an attack that says exhaust Shoulder Cannon, deal 1 damage to an enemy. You may remove 1 ammo counter from War Machine to ready Shoulder Cannon. Very, very cool card. I love it. It is, it has that railgun type of mechanic where you can fire it as much as you want, and you just does rapid fire, dealing 1 damage every single time, and it's only limited by the amount you want to use it, which is limited by the amount of ammo counters on it. So every single time you choose to ready it, you can use it again, and you can ready it again. So if you had 7 counters on War Machine and you wanted to use every single one of them to do a single damage, you can keep readying this and doing 1 damage 7 times, do 7 damage, each time picking a different enemy if you want, picking the same enemy, until you have expended all your ammo counters. So it's very, very flexible. You can split the damage how you want. You can ping off things. You can take off a tough status. There's so much you can do with this card that it's going to be, I think, a really vital part of War Machine's arsenal, and just really finding a really awesome way to utilize those ammo counters. You might rarely want to use all of them on Shoulder Cannon, but having the option to use a couple and then, ready it until you're done with wanting to use them for this card, and then find other ways to use your counters for other cards. Like, that's what the flexibility allows here, and I really, really love this card. So I'm pretty excited about this. I'm glad that a card like this made it in, and I could see this being a vital card in all your strategies and one you're going to be using in a lot of games. All right, let's talk about Targeted Strike. Now, this is your threat removal card. That's, usually we tend to find that there's at least 1 card in the hero cards that allows you to remove threat or deal with threat in some way, even if it's not coming in a Justice pack. That is Targeted Strike here. It is a 1-cost event, pretty cheap. Hero action, remove 1 ammo counter from War Machine, remove 3 threat from a scheme. This is a pretty efficient threat removal card. I don't know yet how many of these are going to be in the deck. I'm sure if I looked at all the numbers of the cards, the 10 to 15, whatever, there might be a way to discern if we're going to have multiple copies of this. I wouldn't be surprised for something like this if there was multiple copies. But it's super efficient. Yes, you have to use 1 of your ammo counters, but for 1 cost to remove 3 threat, especially if you're playing in a scenario where you're playing solo and you don't have someone else to deal with threat, and you're relying on cards like this to really keep things in check while you're taking down the villain and doing other things, especially if you're playing him leadership. This is just a great tool to have in your arsenal that you can rely on. 1 ammo counter is not going to be that big of a deal for you. 1 cost is not going to be that big of a deal for you. So it's very easy to get out that way. Again, you're starting with 5 ammo counters at the start of a hero phase, as long as you've switched over to War Machine. And if that's the case, you're leaving yourself with at least 4, if not an additional 2 if you have that support card out. So very, very good card. I think it'll be key to managing threat while you're trying to do other things. And hey, who knows, maybe a Justice version of War Machine will be something that's super viable and super powerful, and this will just be another tool to help remove threat really reliably. So pretty cool card, and one that I'm happy to see. All right, we have an AoE card, which is an area of effect, if you're not familiar with the term, which means that you do a whole bunch of damage to a bunch of different things. That is Scorched Earth. This is a 3-cost event. Hero action, remove 3 ammo counters from War Machine, so a big chunk of your ammo counters, but deal 3 damage to each enemy that is in play. So this is your board wipe. This is if you're playing Ultron and you have some powered up bots in play and you're trying to deal with like other minions in play, whatever the case is, this is where you just scorch scorch them all. Yes, you do get rid of 3 of your ammo counters, which, you know, it could be 3 of your 5, that's over half. Yes, it costs 3 for an event, which is, you know, on the steeper side. But man, that effect is just so powerful. There needed to be something like this in here with everything he has in his arsenal, and thematically we need that big, huge explosion. That is Scorched Earth. I love it. I think you're going to be using it a lot. There is the I would say you're going to be using it a lot depending on the scenario you're playing in. There is going to be times where you're just not looking for a board wipe. You're only really wanting to do damage to 2 things, maybe even 1 thing, and this card ends up just sort of being a resource in your hand because of it, or one that you're drawing and saying, oh, I wish I could properly utilize this, but I can't. I would say that there's still such scenarios that if you only have 2 minions in play that are being pesky, that this is going to kill off both. It's absolutely probably still worth it to play it. And you're dealing damage to the villain as well on top of that. But it's just one of those things where it could be a little bit situational. Doesn't detract from the fact that it's just an awesome card when you pull it off, and especially when you hit tons of things on the board. And thematically, it's just a really cool card. So that is Scorched Earth. All right, next up we have Full Auto. This is War Machine's big, huge single target attack. Most heroes do have a card like this in their hero arsenal, and usually it's tied into the thematics of them. You know, we've seen really basic versions like Spinning Web Kick where it's just a big chunk of damage, and we've seen other ones that demand, you know, you be in a certain form or whatever the case may be. This one does have its own condition, but it is pretty cool. So it's a 2-cost event. Hero action attack, remove 4 ammo counters, that's almost all of your ammo counters that you start with, from War Machine and choose an enemy. Deal 8 damage to that enemy, and this attack gains overkill. Obviously a huge attack. There's a couple things to note here. You are losing most of your ammo counters. With that 1 remaining ammo counter, you know, you're only going to be able to do things like remove 3 threat or deal a single damage. You're leaving yourself in a situation where there's not much more you're going to do with your ammo counters on that turn. It is only a 2 cost to do 8 damage, which is pretty ridiculous. So I don't want to discount that fact, but it is a steep cost on the ammo counter side of things. So if you have other things you want to do on your turn, you're going to have to balance. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? What are you willing to sacrifice? That being said, if what you're looking to do is deal a whole bunch of damage to one thing, or deal with a minion and have that like spill over onto the villain, like especially if there was a guard minion in play, this is an amazing card to do that. It's really hard to find much wrong with what the effect is. It's fantastic for the cost. Again, really the only thing you're going to be considering is, can you spend the ammo counters when you want to play it? But overall, you should know by now, I usually rave about these type of cards in most of these previews and the reviews that I do. I love the big damage dealing cards. Aggression is one of my favorite aspects, so I'm just one of those guys who, when I'm dealing a lot of damage, that's when I feel like I'm contributing the most in this game. Even though there is other ways to contribute for sure, that's when I feel the most fulfilled in contributing. And I just love cards like this where it gives me these huge tools to just have this really huge, powerful turn and just feel really good about it. Overkill makes it so that, you know, if you need to deal with a minion, you're not feeling like, oh, I wasted all this damage just to deal with the minion. You still get to spill some over the villain. There's a lot of flexibility there. Awesome card. I love it. And again, it's listed as 14 out of 15. This might be a 1 of in the deck, but oh man, it would be amazing if it was a 2 of. Though again, because you're doing 4 ammo counters, you're never going to be, I don't think, using 2 in the same turn. That's just not going to happen. So I understand why there's only 1, but I'm the guy who wants to just play them all in one turn and have a turn where I do like 20 damage because they just feel so great. So that is Full Auto. All right, so before I move on to the leadership cards, there is one final hero card to look at, and I saved this one for last because a big thing in this deck, at least I think with something that's going to be big for a lot of people and get people really excited, are the allies that are available to you. And there is, of course, the signature ally, and the signature ally for War Machine, as you might have expected, is Iron Man, which is really obviously exciting because we have an Iron Man ally in leadership, but we haven't had an Iron Man ally as a signature ally, and usually those have a little bit of a higher power level, and they're just a little bit more exciting to play. So Iron Man is a 3-cost ally. It has 2 thwart, 2 attack, and 3 health. There's 1 consequential damage on both the thwart and the attack. The response here is, after Iron Man enters play, search your deck and discard pile for a tech upgrade and add it to your hand. Shuffle your deck. I love the ability. It's super powerful. So you've heard me talk in other videos about the tutor effects. And again, if you hadn't, tutor effect comes from the fact that in Magic the Gathering, another card game, there was a card, oh man, I should remember it. I think it's called Demonic Tutor, but it's something tutor, which allowed you to basically search for a card from your deck. Tutoring a card means you get to find a specific card. Usually that's a really powerful effect because it can find you that combo piece. It can really get you something with very little limitations. There obviously is a limitation here in the fact that it's a tech upgrade, but because you can, build your deck however you want, you can build your deck, and you probably should, in a way where your tech upgrades are going to be some of your most powerful cards, especially because Iron Man is going to get you or give you the opportunity to grab the exact one you want. Now, we've seen so far, I think, only a single tech upgrade from War Machine's cards. That would be the Shoulder Cannon. So that was a tech upgrade. Shoulder Cannon is obviously very, very good. It's a card you would love to get out early and always be able to put ammo counters into. So even just searching for Shoulder Cannon is a great target for Iron Man. But again, we've seen lots of tech upgrades across all the aspects. Maybe not all of them, but we've definitely seen a lot of tech upgrades, especially with Rocket Raccoon and Iron Man himself being in the game, that there are going to be cards that you can build into your deck to search for, even if we don't get a whole lot of other tech upgrades in Iron Man's set of hero cards. I just love the fact that you can search out an exact card you want. I love that it's only 3 costs. 2 costs would have been fantastic, but I understand why it's a 3 cost. It's still pretty reliable for 3 costs. You could be doing 6 damage. You could be doing 6 thwart. You split that how you want. He can take a hit. He has a lot of flexibility. I think you'll be playing him a lot, and mostly for the fact that, again, Search Notice, a very specific card, is just really, really powerful, and you can't ignore that effect. So that is Iron Man, and now it's time to jump into 2 other allies that were unveiled that are part of the leadership aspect, but I think are going to have people pretty excited. All right, so we are jumping into the first of the 2 allies that were unveiled for leadership. The reason I think these are exciting for a lot of people is that, I personally enjoy getting some allies introduced into the game that are lesser known heroes, ones I'm not familiar with, and we've had a lot of those recently. I wouldn't say we've had like the A-listers coming up as allies in the aspects as often as of late. We had Yondu, and I'm sure to some people, some of them are a very big deal. But for me, who's a casual reader, some of them don't resonate until I have to look into them or I've just heard of them. That being said, long-winded way of getting to the fact that we have 2 heavy hitters here. The first one is Black Panther. So Black Panther T'Challa's Black Panther is now an ally for leadership. It is a 4 cost, 4 health, 2 thwart, 2 attack. It does have 2 consequential damage on both the thwart and the attack, so it's limited there. You may play. So they order this on the card. I'm going to read this backwards. I'm going to read the responsibility first and then read the first ability. So the responsibility here is after Black Panther enters play, choose a leadership event in your discard pile and attach it to him. So that's specifically an event card from the leadership aspect, and you attach it to Black Panther. Now you may play the event attached to Black Panther as if it were in your hand. You don't have to play it that turn. Any point while he's in play, you can play that. So you can essentially look at this as you have now an additional card in your hand. If you have a 6-card hand, you now have a 7-card hand. It's just that one of the cards is static. It's always going to be that exact card, but you can play that whenever it's effective to you. Now, again, you have to keep in mind, sometimes allies can die at inopportune moments and when you're not planning for them to die. If that happens, you're losing that card without ever having played it. But if you're able to keep him in play and only have him take the block that kills him or whatever the case may be, when you're ready for that to happen, you essentially get this additional card in your hand that is now able to be played whenever is most advantageous to you. And depending how you've packed different events into your deck from the leadership aspect, there's tons of combo potential here. Whether you put a card there, I'm not going to remember all the names of these cards off the top of my head. I'm usually bad with naming for things like that, but if you put a card onto an event card that is going to power up your entire board of allies, you could have that on Black Panther, wait for your entire board to build up, not have to hope you draw into it, and just know that this card is there ready to be played whenever you want. I mean, that's just one possibility. There's tons of combo possibilities that allow you to basically have it at the ready and use it when you want. And in addition to that, you're grabbing this from the discard pile, so there's a good chance you either already used this and now you're getting another use of it, which normally you'd have to wait for it to come up again, or it's one that got discarded from having to use it as a resource because you couldn't play it at the time, or in a way that you didn't want it to be discarded and you gained it back. Lots of possibilities here. Again, not only is it super exciting to have Black Panther as an aspected ally, it's just really, really a really cool effect, and it's one that I think there's going to be a lot of interesting ways to utilize it and to really take advantage of it. That I'm really excited to see the decks that people come up with for Black Panther. All right, so now we have Captain Marvel. So we have seen Captain Marvel as an ally, but it was a signature ally, and I believe it was Spider-Woman it was the deck that it came in. But now we have Captain Marvel as an aspected ally, which means that you're going to be able to play Captain Marvel in any leadership deck that you want. So this is the Carol Danvers Captain Marvel. It's a 5-cost ally, pretty steep cost. 2 thwart, 3 attack, 1 consequential damage on the thwart, 2 on the attack. She does have 4 health. The response here is after Captain Marvel enters play, discard the top 4 cards of your deck. If you discard a printed Lightning resource. I always get called out for calling that the wrong thing. I probably just did it again. Energy resource, lightning resource. Deal 3 damage to an enemy if you discard more than 1 printed energy resource. Also stun that enemy. So a couple things to play here. One, she does have a steep cost. 5 is a steep cost in this game. That can be a really tough cost to get out. There are ways to avoid the cost, or just like make the cost less expensive. So you don't always have to play this for full cost. But if you are playing for full cost, that's essentially your entire hand, right? Like that's not going to be something you do very often. So that is something to keep in mind with these allies. She does have 2 consequential damage on the 3 attack, which means that even if you do 2 attacks with her, that's basically doing 6 damage for 5 cost, which is not very efficient. Obviously, you still get the ability out of it, but again, there is the opportunity for that ability to miss or just not do what you want it to do. Obviously, with the thwart, you get a little bit more out of her that way. So that I would say is not like uber exciting, that stat line, but the ability is really cool. So you are losing 4 cards off the top of your deck. In what we're seeing with War Machine specifically, there are ways to get the cards from your discard pile back. So maybe if you build your deck around that, it's not as big of a deal that you're losing some cards. If you've built your deck around a card like Captain Marvel, discarding these energy resources shouldn't be, something that is going to be like with 4 cards. You're not going to necessarily be thinking, "Am I going to discard one?" You're going to be thinking, "Am I discarding 2?" If you've built your deck around it. If you haven't and you're just hoping to hit it, it might be a different story. But then at that point, you're probably not like putting Captain Marvel in your deck. Dealing 3 damage to an enemy just by playing her is a great benefit, and stunning the enemy makes it a phenomenal benefit. So if you're able to hit that for 5 costs to get a pretty tough ally in play that can do multiple things with thwart and attack and deal 3 damage and stun an enemy as soon as she comes into play, that does make her really good. I'm just a little bit hesitant on the cost. But again, that's literally just if we're talking about playing it for the full cost from your hand. There are other ways to get them out. And as we'll see, there's actually one coming up that'll allow you to utilize some of these high cost allies in different ways, which is something we've been missing from the game a little bit, I think. So that is Captain Marvel. Again, whatever you think about the abilities and how she's going to end up turning out with her high cost, I just think it's really cool that we got 2 really big A-listers here as allies in this deck. And that's all we've seen so far. Maybe there'll be others as well. So with that being said, let's jump into some more leadership cards. All right, so now we've got Sneak Attack. So Sneak Attack is a 1-cost event. It's a leadership card. Action, choose an ally in your hand that shares a trait with your identity. Put that ally into play. If that ally is still in play at the end of your at the end of this phase, discard it. So this is really, really interesting. The reason I like this card is because we have seen a lot of these high-cost allies like I just showed you with Captain Marvel. Now, if you play Captain Marvel with Sneak Attack, it almost essentially gives her that Nick Fury-esque, ability where Nick Fury's whole function is he does some stuff when he hits play, but he's not going to last more than that turn. So you just want to get as much out of him as you can. The difference here is that it is only to the end of the phase, so you can't reliably play Captain Marvel and then also block with her to be able to get the full use, the essential full use out of an ally in the way that you can with Nick Fury. You're not going to get that here. That being said, to get a 5-cost ally out like Captain Marvel for 1, if you hit the energy requirements on the discarding of the cards and do that 3 damage and stun for 1 and get an attack or a thwart in with her, that is really, really good value. And I like that Sneak Attack exists now because it gives you the option of sort of a backup plan to playing some of these allies at full cost. Yes, it would be great if you found a way to play Captain Marvel either at full cost or discounts to where you get the full value out of Captain Marvel or any of the expensive allies. I'm just using Captain Marvel as an example, but Sneak Attack allows you to have this other way to do it. Say, hey, I'm not going to be able to play Captain Marvel for full cost this turn, but I'll Sneak Attack her out, get some value out of her, do as much as I can with her. She'll be discarded, but I can still do other stuff with my turn. I like Sneak Attack's introduction to the game. I'm excited to use it and see if it encourages me to put some of these more expensive allies into my deck, because now I have this other option of how to play them and what to get out of them. Really like Sneak Attack. I'm glad it's in the game. And we're even going to get another option that you can do with some of these expensive allies. So let's jump into the next card. All right, and lastly, we have Go Down Swinging. I love this card. Also, it has really great Spider-Man art on it. So this is a 0-cost event. Hero action, discard an ally you control, deal damage to an enemy equal to that ally's printed cost. In my honest opinion, we have needed a card like this in the game because there has been a lot of discussion at different points and a lot of debate. Maybe not even debate, maybe it's universally agreed upon, but like there is sort of this understanding that cheaper allies are just really, really preferable and good in Marvel Champions because they act as a chump blocker. You can reliably get them out, whereas sometimes even 4-cost allies can be pretty difficult to find to justify playing over other things you're doing. As soon as you get over 4 costs, it's just really hard to even put them in your deck because you have to say, how often am I going to get this card out? We just talked about Captain Marvel, which is a 5-cost ally. That can be really hard to get out. There are ways like Sneak Attack to get Captain Marvel out. With Go Down Swinging, it adds a whole other layer into your strategy and your deck building here, because now when you sneak attack Captain Marvel out and you know she's going to get discarded at the end of the phase, if you combo that with Go Down Swinging, you're getting even more value out of Captain Marvel than if you had played her for full cost, because now you're basically paying 1 to put Captain Marvel into play. She's triggering her responsibility for having entered play, potentially doing you 3 damage there. Then you're attacking with her, exhausting her to attack, dealing another 3 damage. Then you're doing Go Down Swing to deal another 5 damage. That is insane value. Yes, you're using a lot of cards in your hand, but you're doing a lot with these cards, and especially if Captain Marvel is going to be hard to get out. And this now goes for any of the allies in the game. We're seeing other there's been other expensive leadership allies. There's heroes that allow you to do multiple aspects and things like that. There's so many possibilities for these expensive allies to have this sort of backup plan, or even your plan A if that's how you're sort of building your deck around the cards like this. I think the Go Down Swinging enables so many cool strategies and deck building strategies that didn't exist before, and it kind of gets you to rethink some of these really expensive allies that have been in the game that we just thought really cool, but if I'm trying to find a really effective deck, I'm just not going to include them because they're just too expensive. I love that we've got Go Down Swinging. I have to think the Go Down Swinging and Sneak Attack are kind of a response to some of that criticism and to those thoughts of the game, because I think it's pretty validated that low-cost allies are just a lot better. So having cards like this is just going to open up the deck creation space. I know the first thing I'm going to do when I get this pack is leadership is probably my least favorite aspect, and just is that only because of my playstyle. I know it's a really popular aspect, but cards like this, I would love to play this archetype of leadership. I would love to find a way to use this and just put allies out, sacrifice them, do some damage, and just play this more damage-focused, a big ally-focused version of leadership. So I'm really, really excited about this card. I know I say that about a lot of cards, but it gets me pumped when cards like this get introduced to let you rethink other cards that have been in the game for a while. I think that if this ends up turning out to be a really vital card to revisit those allies, I think this pack in general is going to be really popular for people to pick up as a way to enable that for their deck building. So that is Go Down Swinging. Really excited about it. All right, those are all the cards from War Machine. I'm pretty pumped about this pack. I mean, I'm pumped about all the packs, but War Machine is not a hero that I necessarily always gravitate towards or am really excited just hearing that War Machine's in the game. But having seen the thematics, how they're introducing like the reload mechanic and the ammo counters, the fact that there's a bunch of really cool leadership cards and we haven't even seen them all that are being introduced that allow you to play leadership in a different way, the allies that are being introduced here, I could see War Machine ending up being a pack that a lot of people are going to want to pick up because of what it's offering in the cards that are in there. So I'm really excited about this pack. Cannot wait to play it. This will obviously be coming after Thanos and Nebula, I would assume, unless we get a surprise thing where 2 are coming out the same month. But otherwise, we do have a bit of a wait here. But either way, I think it's going to be really fun when we do get our hands on War Machine. Let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts on these cards? Do you agree with what I've been saying about some of these cards? Are you less excited, more excited, less enthused, more enthused? I'd love to discuss with you in the comments. It's one of my favorite parts about posting these videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. There is going to obviously be some content coming out this weekend because I'm getting my hands on Venom. Super exciting. I cannot wait. So you'll see some review content on that. And then we are full steam ahead into the Thanos expansion box, which obviously will have a bunch of content on as well. Thanks so much for watching. See you in the next one.